So welcome everyone. We'll be getting started in maybe 2 more minutes. So do what you can to settle in. Make sure you have what you need to be able to sit comfortably. So we're going to begin as we have since the beginning of the year by doing a short contemplation where we're practicing keeping in mind during the reflection our refuge and then these trainings and non-harming that in Buddhism we call the precepts. And then we'll do a guided meditation. And for all of this work of meditation and contemplation, it really helps to simplify our environment. Now, at this point, probably not a good idea to change your location, but one thing that we can over time get a little sloppy about is how useful it is just to hold the body relatively still. It's just like finding that corner in your room that's relatively uncluttered, where you have a nice chair and nothing to kind of trigger mental reactivity, preferably. It's the same thing about holding the body still. It's not that these little movements or adjustments are somehow evil or going to ruin our practice, but it helps when the body's still, the mind settles, because the body and the mind, they mirror each other quite a bit. So we can take advantage, right, of that simple truth that the body and mind affect each other by having the body relaxed as best we can and having the body relatively still as best we can, and just let that be good enough. Because if you get upset about the movements that do arise, well, of course, that's just more triggering for the activity of the mind. And it will get in the way of everything settling and get in the way of keeping whatever theme that you're contemplating, get in the way of keeping that in mind. Because now you're worried about moving, or you're worried that you chose the wrong corner of your living room to sit, or something like that. And on the spinning mind goes. So, having settled, having invited the body in a kind way to relax, maybe having taken a few longer, deeper, easy breaths. At some point, we'll feel grounded and settled enough in the sitting posture. And we pick up our contemplation. And since the beginning of the year, we've been taking a minute or two to contemplate our refuge. What is actually my refuge in this life? And as many of us who have found the teachings of the Buddha useful, we use this traditional reflection. In other words, we think about our actual refuge in these three ways. I take refuge in the Buddha, meaning I take refuge in the capacity of this heart to be open and sensitive, awake, alert. I take refuge in the knowing. And the second refuge I take refuge in is I take refuge in Dhamma or Dharma, the way it is. The conditions or the circumstances that are showing up in each moment of my life. I take refuge not needing the conditions to be different, but rather taking refuge and dealing with the conditions that are actually showing up for me in this moment. And I take refuge in the Buddha, being intimate with Dharma or Dhamma, being awake to the conditions, the circumstances that are here, internal, external, being real with, being awake to the way it is. Buddha knowing Dhamma. And the third refuge I take refuge in is this refuge of wise and compassionate engagement, showing up to my world, showing up to my responsibilities and duties and concerns from this place of Buddha, knowing Dhamma, from this place of being awake, open-hearted to the way that it actually is. And trusting that my engagement, what I think, what I say, what I do, flows best, most skillfully from this place of Buddha being awake to Dhamma. These are the three refuges I take refuge in. So like this, each of us finding our own way once a day, once a week, or something like that, in a very real way to reflect, what is the refuge of my life, the refuges of my life? What do I trust? What can I place my heart upon? And the other traditional reflection or contemplation is to remember to bring to mind and to reassert or to take a resolve around this value of non-harming, which is really the foundation of the spiritual life. Basically recognizing there is more than enough suffering in my own heart and in the world around me. Enough suffering that it makes so much sense that there would arise this deep value undertaking the training to refrain from causing harm to living beings. Undertaking the training to refrain from taking things that haven't been freely offered, aren't naturally coming my way. Undertaking the training to refrain from causing confusion or harm with my sexuality, my sexual activities and thoughts. Undertaking the training to refrain from using words, language in ways that cause harm, which would even include using silence in ways, not speaking when speaking would be the right or skillful thing to do. And finally, the fifth training, fifth precept, undertaking the training to refrain from intoxicating the mind and that in ways that increase carelessness, making mistakes that cause harm. These are the 5 trainings I undertake because of this deep and resonant value. I do not want to plant more seeds for suffering for myself or for others. And so with this contemplation, we settle into the meditation time now. You can let the eyes close if that's comfortable for you. Taking a moment, establishing mindfulness to the fore. Mindfulness simply means moment by moment to recognize that this experience is being known, and we can use the present moment experience of breathing in and breathing out to support the establishing of mindfulness right here, right now. So we're remembering to recognize that breathing in is like this, breathing out is like this, cultivating this continuity of present moment awareness. And it's not about controlling the breathing process in any way. It's really about valuing our practice of Buddha, being intimate with Dhamma. And the physicality of breathing in and breathing out is just a convenient working ground or training ground. And we have a deep habit of feeling responsible for the diversity of our experience, the sounds that are in the room, the sights, the thoughts that are being thought, other sensations that are coming and going. But for a while, as a training, we bring a more exclusive attention to the ordinary physical process of breathing in and breathing out. In the second training, the Buddha invites us to bring our attention to is just to track the breathing in and the breathing out closely enough to be able to discern the relative length or shortness of each breath. We don't have to think or analyze, it's just staying close enough to the physicality of breathing in and breathing out to just have that discerning sense. Oh, this is a relatively gross movement of the breath, or this is a relatively subtle. This is a relatively long, or this is a relatively short in-breath or out-breath. So just experiment in a relaxed way with that mindful tracking of the physicality of breathing in and out. Knowing that it's okay to relax, we don't have to control the breath. And with this more exclusive attention to the meditation object, the physicality of breathing in and out, we're willing to begin again and again and again whenever the mind wanders. That's okay, because that's what the mind does. The attention wanders because of habit. But we bring it back in a gentle and persistent way. So without getting tight, getting really interested in that continuity or that tracking So there are no gaps in the mindful attention, the knowing. So this is already a profound letting go. The attention is not attending to other phenomena, other aspects of one's experience. All of that is in the background. And the mind is choosing to know this one ordinary thing of breathing in and breathing out as it actually is, moment by moment. And there may already be some pleasure of seclusion. So include that as you're breathing in and knowing the sensations of breathing in. Notice any peace or calm of seclusion. And when you feel that the mind has tasted the pleasure of seclusion, the pleasure of simplicity, just knowing this one thing, sensations of breathing in, sensations of breathing out, then begin to include the third instruction from the Buddha. Breathing in, one trains oneself to experience the whole body. Breathing out, one trains oneself experiencing the whole body. So now we have a more inclusive awareness as we're breathing in, breathing out. So in a sense, the physicality of breathing in and out, not so much in the forefront. Now in the forefront is more the sensations of the totality of the body, the experience of sitting. And all the different sensations in the body are held equally in a way. So we're not favoring the pain or looking for the pleasure in the body, but just feeling the whole experience of the body sitting as we breathe in, tracking, opening to the whole body as we breathe out. an unconditional acceptance, an unconditional allowing the sensations of the whole body to be the way they are. Recognizing that the body has rights to be the way that it is as you're breathing in. It has rights to be the way it is as you breathe out. So in this way, the mind's not in conflict with the way the body is, with each inhalation, with each exhalation. And this can support a pervading calm in the body as you're breathing in, as you're breathing out. And that's the fourth instruction, where the Buddha invites us experiencing calm in the body, calming the body as you breathe in, as you breathe out, and just that sense of calm spreading and deepening throughout the body. Of course, notice it where you can initially without forcing anything. Just notice whatever calm there is in the physicality of the whole body. And just sense it spreading and settling more and deepening more with each inhalation and with each exhalation. So then the meditation object is we're keeping calm in the body. We're keeping that in mind as we breathe in, and we're keeping the calming of the body in mind as we exhale. And for some, it's useful to have a meditation word, so you could use the word calming or calm with each inhalation and with each exhalation, if that helps. It's the calm of the mind, letting the body be the way it is, not in conflict. So notice the calm as you breathe in as best you can, noticing the calm in the body as you breathe out as best you can, letting the body be. The fifth instruction, one trains oneself while breathing in, experiencing joy, One trains oneself while breathing out, experiencing joy. So we sense the movement, the natural flow of body and mind, activity of body and mind, the delightful, free-flowing movement of the life of the body and mind. And the heart delights in the experience being less and less fixed, more alive, more bright, and a kind of joyful interest can begin to arise. So with this fifth instruction, the Buddha is inviting us to keep that ordinary but beautiful quality of joy in mind as you breathe in, keeping joy in mind as you breathe out, wherever, however you sense it. Might be a lightness of the heart, a sense of movement or flow, energetic flow, or a buoyancy, a bright interest. So these are some of the qualities to notice as you breathe in. As you breathe out, you don't have to force this. Just be curious about joy. And remember, you can use a meditation word or a meditation phrase like experiencing joy, repeating that silently in the heart as you breathe in, and then again as you breathe out. But of course, being relaxed, not forcing anything. We're uncovering something that's very natural. The arising of joy is a natural thing that happens when the conditions are there, the supporting conditions. And as we keep it in mind, sensing the joy filling the space of the moment, whole body and mind, affected, touched by the joy, the lightness of the heart. As if the whole body and mind had that bright, light, enlivened quality. And then the sixth instruction, one trains oneself, breathing in, experiencing ease of the heart, sukha. One trains oneself while breathing out, experiencing sukha, this ease of the heart. So more resonant happiness, contentedness. Keeping that in mind as you breathe in, keeping this in mind as you breathe out, ease of the heart, contentment of the heart. The heart that doesn't need things to be different. And then the next two steps with more of that recognition of sukha, this ease of the heart, then it's easier with this space of dispassion to observe the mental activity as you breathe in and breathe out. Thoughts come and go. But there's just a lot more space, that space of dispassion. Because of the contentedness, the mind doesn't feel so dependent on thoughts and the meaning that the thoughts construct. So breathing in, just aware of the activity of the thinking mind, perceiving mind. Breathing out, just aware of mental activity. And the eighth instruction is to notice how things quiet down. The mental activity begins to quiet. Precisely because there's an awareness that, a dispassionate awareness of mental activity. So breathing in, experiencing the quieting of the mental activity of thought. Breathing out, experiencing the quieting of the mind. And with more quietness in the body, more quietness in the thinking mind. The next instruction, one trains oneself while breathing in to experience the space of the mind, the nature of the mind, the knowing mind. And same as you exhale. So just the space of the present moment, the space of knowing, the space of the mind as you breathe in, as you breathe out. Practice keeping this in mind, not the activity of the mind, what it's perceiving or thinking, not the activity of the body, sounds and sensations, but breathing in, experiencing the space of the present moment. Breathing out, experiencing, sensing the space of the knowing mind. Just do the best you can. And as we experience the space of the present moment, the space of the mind, naturally the heart will deeply appreciate, will be glad about this recognition. Some deep intuition about what is possible. Of freedom from being pushed around by our likes and dislikes. So notice that gladdening, that appreciation as you breathe in and out, that deeper valuing of what's being recognized. And this supports a greater confidence and stillness as the heart learns to abide in the space itself, space of the mind, the space of the present moment. Very natural concentration Experiencing the stillness as we breathe in, appreciating the stillness as we breathe out. As if all that's left is stillness, quietness, silence, and the valuing of that quietness as you breathe in and out. And even the subtle sense of ownership, owning this piece, can naturally fall away, which is the fourth instruction here in this third set. The Buddha says one trains oneself breathing in, liberating the mind of all selfing. Same as we breathe out, of course. But this is a natural falling away of ownership. There's the great, beautiful stillness and the dropping away of any remnant selfing. And for the last couple minutes, being in a relatively refined state of settledness, just contemplating the possibility of non-grasping, non-clinging, non-attachment. And those moments where you notice attachment, you notice clinging, notice some constriction. Does this heart, does the moment need attachment? Is it functional? Is it needed in any way? Is it safe for the heart to relinquish all grasping, all attachment? Is that dangerous? So just explore this in a subtle, simple way for the last minute or two. So when we contemplate the possibility of non-grasping, It's not theoretical, it's actually here and now in this moment. Does this heart need to construct some sense of ground? Is it safe to just allow for this free fall of non-grasping, letting everything be? So take a moment, everyone, and stretch a little bit if needed. And while we're settling, just a reminder that the new way we're doing this on Sunday morning is we're live streaming with the Zoom. So both things happen at the same time, which means that I'm spotlighting myself, but you can always switch to gallery view if you prefer. But for the live streaming, I need to spotlight myself. And I see there's a question in the chat, and I'll go through. I think we'll address that in part. But feel free to send questions to the center for the Sunday morning, and I'll try to integrate your questions into the discussion as we're sort of in the last phase of studying the Buddha's teachings on anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing in and out, this very sophisticated and complete and also still simple instruction that the Buddha gave. Probably the most complete and useful meditation instruction the Buddha gave that was recorded and passed along through all these generations. And we'll be moving to the fourth set of instructions. So most of you have heard this. There are 16 instructions, depending on how you interpret the first set. And each sort of general category, we often divide it into 4 tetrads. The first having to do with mindfulness of the body. The second set of 4 having to do with mindfulness of mental activity. The third set of 4 really having to do with mindfulness of the nature of the mind, the nature of the present moment. And then the fourth is, what do I need to keep in mind to support the letting go of awakening? So having really opened from the gross to the most subtle aspect of our being, body, activity of the mind, space of the mind, having learned what there is to learn in being intimate, being present with the body, activity of mind, and the mind, now what have I learned I need to keep in mind so that when I'm keeping it in mind, the heart lets go. And what is the heart letting go of? It's letting go of its dependence on sense experience, its fixation. And the way we fixate on our experiences is through those avenues of greed and aversion and delusion or distraction or having a fixed view about our sense experience. So now this we should have a lot of humility about. What is the mind that's not doing that? Isn't relating to sense experience in a dependent way? through greed, through hatred or aversion, through distractedness. So this mind, this knowing mind that isn't oriented towards sense experience in that dependent way. Well, we have the reports back, and some of us have little experiences or bigger experiences, life-changing experiences, right? So we have some intuition about the kind of space of freedom that arises. And the interesting thing is, it's not so much that we want to disappear into this space, but understanding the mind, let's just say the heart or mind that lets go, it actually, in a way, it's the most functional thing in the world, because it tells us how to be in the world of experience. Having learned how to be not attached, not grasping experience, all of a sudden we know better how to be in this world where there are sense experiences and there are thoughts and there are opinions in my mind. So it's really important that we don't interpret the Buddhist teachings as this escape, like, how do I get the hell out of here? Because life is really hard and I want an exit ramp. And, a lot of religious traditions, they talk about getting to heaven, someplace where we won't be bothered by the messiness of complexity of life. And so it's really important. And I thought this would be a nice theme for those who can stay for the small groups. And I think Shannon is here to lead the groups today, set those in motion at the end. But whether you can stay for the small groups or not, what might be really good homework for all of us is to really, as we get a sense of the path that the Buddha points to, which is, like I mentioned with the contemplation on the 3 refuges, Buddha, this capacity we have to be open and interested and bright, alert to what? To Dhamma, the way it is. So those are our first 2 refuges. Being awake, Buddha, to the way that it is, this moment, the arising experience in this moment, being intimate. So really, Buddha and Dhamma just means deeply valuing being intimate, being present with the way it is. Because there's no awakening and there's no possibility to be a really functional, alive, engaged human being without valuing Buddha and Dhamma. Now, you don't have to call it Buddha and Dhamma, but there isn't another way. This is the Buddha's opinion, and I certainly align with that. Like, hard to imagine, like, what would the alternative be? Like, to be a good human being by not being awake to the way it is. How would that work? Probably not very well. I mean, we have all sorts of examples in our own lives of times, moments, maybe yesterday, maybe this morning, of not being clearly aware, not being interested, right? To connect with the way it is. Rather put our head in the sand or turn away, get absorbed in something that, just some distraction, whatever it might be. So I thought for the small groups and just generally, what is the difference between just being averse to the world, to the complexity of the world, averse to our suffering, averse to the suffering of others, wanting it to be done, wanting it to be over, but from a place of aversion, and what we talk about a lot in the Buddhist tradition of dispassion, or which is onward leading to letting go. Because remember, I just said that when we get to this 4th, which I'm going to introduce in more depth today, this 4th set of 4 instructions, right? So that's instruction, what would that be? 16, 15, 14, 13. Okay, so 13 through 16. It's really about answering that question. What do I need to keep in mind that allows the heart to let go? And so the fruit of the Buddhist path, we know the word nirvana or nibbana in Pali, nirvana in Sanskrit language. So what is nibbana? Well, the word means the letting go, the giving up of craving, or you could say the giving up, the once and for all full awakening, is the once and for all, full and complete, no latent tendencies remaining of that giving up of the mind thinking that sense experience should be clung to, that any sense experience, pleasant or unpleasant, should be clung to. So we could be in our deathbed dying, and a wave of nausea comes up or some kind of pain comes up, and the mind wouldn't think, right, like an awakened being, someone who's done all the work there is to do, they wouldn't think, I need to get attached to wanting this pain to go away. It doesn't mean they like the wave of pain that's showing up in their life, but they're not gonna, there's no habit left to resist what is already true in the moment. It's just not there, because it's the work, the spiritual work of uprooting that tendency has been done. So when we think about Nibbana as a letting go of the mind wrongly thinking that the heart has to resist experience that comes and goes, has to have a fixed idea. So sometimes we think about this in terms of the three floods, the asavas, influxes, outflows. It's defined in different ways, but the 3 or 4 floods, that has to do with the flood of like always thinking I should cling to sense experience that I like. So getting pushed around by our likes and our dislikes. And then the second flood is the flood of becoming, always getting swept away, like I want to be the person that is this way, or I don't want to be the person that way, right? And the third flood is using fixed views, like that movement in our heart, like taking refuge in a fixed idea, which almost always involves selfing. You know, all my fixed ideas store a sense of a me or a mine, an I, me, or my, right? And we fix on it. So these are the 3 floods towards, like, basically taking refuge in a sense experience that's going to save my day, or becoming somebody I want to become that will save my day, or an idea, an opinion that I'm going to fixate on, I'm going to hold tight to, that's going to save my day, save my butt. So these are the 3 floods, and this is really what we're letting go of. And all 3 of these floods have to do with this dependence on experience. Not just what we see and what we touch and what we smell and what we taste and what we hear, but also all of our mental constructions about sensuality, about me, like becoming somebody. That's sensuality, even though it's just my own thoughts about Mark, who gets his act together and starts to exercise and eats well and, lives to be 120 and passes away quietly in his sleep, with all the clarity. No, passes away sitting in full lotus in deep samadhi. Right? We set these like, oh, I want to become that, the perfect person who knows how to die and knows how to live and knows how to laugh and totally woke in all the right ways, politically correct, and does everything just right. And we have these, and we can suffer just like desiring something for lunch is actually not so different than craving to become somebody, who doesn't need lunch or something like that. Or fixating on an opinion, whatever it might be, we're looking for refuge in what can't provide any lasting refuge. And these are the floods, and this is what the heart gives up. Now, the question is, because this is really what that last set of 4 instructions are all about. And the word changes here. Instead of what the Buddha often is using, like breathing in, one experiences, he uses the word one contemplates or one observes. So we're keeping something in mind: impermanence, dispassion, cessation, letting go. Those are the last 4 instructions. So same sort of setup, while breathing in, one contemplates impermanence. While breathing out, one contemplates impermanence. then the next. One breathes in, one contemplates dispassion. One breathes out, one contemplates dispassion. Then cessation, then letting go. And this is the basic formula. It's used in slightly different ways. And the centuries after the time of the Buddha, they kind of elaborated in these very simple process. But remember, what the Buddha is describing in this last set of instructions isn't so much of me or you as a person and what my assignment is. Oh, I got to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then he's really describing a natural process, as if someone were to describe water falling from the clouds on the side of a mountain and flowing down and ending up in the streams and lakes and eventually in the ocean. Or someone were to describe how winter naturally progresses into spring and summer, or summer progresses into fall and winter. So when the heart keeps what in mind, then there's going to be a natural process. Like if I keep in mind my likes and dislikes, then what keeps naturally unfolding is what we call in Buddhism samsara, cycles of stress and suffering, because I'm paying attention to my likes and dislikes. So as I move through my day, I notice what I like, and I like it, and I want it, and I want to have it, and I want more of it. And I notice what I don't like, the dust or the dirt or the thing that didn't get done, and I want that to go away. And this is kind of normal human activity, to be fixated because of habit on our likes and dislikes. So we're mostly moving through our days and hours, basically driven by that habit of only attending to the likes and dislikes, ignoring everything else. And when I see something I like, it triggers greed. When I see something I don't like, it triggers aversion, and on and on and on and on. And so now the Buddha is saying, let's, as we move through life, but first we'll do it as a contemplation in meditation so we get good at it. Let's keep in mind impermanence. And remember, impermanence is really just Buddhist code for the way it is. So it's not like, we say, okay, impermanence, as if we're looking at something, how can I notice impermanence? Well, everything we're experiencing is impermanent. It's always been impermanent. It will always be impermanent. Because what that means, like when we're using it in this Buddhist context, that word anicca, impermanence, just means the way it is. And the way experience is flow. Now remember, one of the problems here, and I wanted to bring this up because it can be confusing, and this is the difference between what we might call subjective experience and what we call objective experience. And it's a bit of a twist, because normally we might, from a Western scientific point of view, we might think subjective, not very good, because it's tainted with my particular views, my particular conditioned habits. Objective, from a scientific point of view, good, right? Because, this is objective reality as opposed to subjective reality. But from our practice point of view, objective, what we normally consider to be objective, would be considered diluted. Because from our Buddhist point of view, we understand, and it's not specific to Buddhism, it's just specific to paying attention to the way it is. This experience each of us is having right now, it is subjective. Where is it happening? Whatever experience any of us are having right now, it's being known in our mind. And that's one of the definitions of the word subjective, is existing within the mind. I looked it up, right? So that's what it means to be subjective. We realize that this experience exists in the mind. Now, that's not a choice. Experience is always going to exist in our mind. my thought about what's happening out there in the so-called external world is a thought that exists in my mind, that is being known in my mind. So when we, and this is really right from the start of our practice, when we talk about being mindful of the way it is, there is, as wisdom deepens, there has to be that recognition it's being known here and now in the mind. We don't often say, oh, hearing's being known, but we could always add on in the mind. Seeing is being known in the mind. Thinking is being known in the mind. Touching, even touching, I'm touching the table here, that hardness, that smoothness, that coolness that I'm experiencing is being known in the mind. And once we get that subjective experience is reality, there isn't an objective reality we know. And whenever we talk about objective reality, those are thoughts being known in the mind. So once we get that this is a subjective experiencing going on, always has been, always will, then it's easier to recognize that one of the characteristics of subjective experience, and I prefer to add the ing, subjective experiencing, is that it's always emotion, never stops. So we have a subjective experience, but when we look at that subjective experience of a sound being heard, or a sight being seen, or a thought being thought, or a touch being known, it's a river. It's a changing, flowing, moving, happening. It isn't a thing. So that's that 13th instruction. Whether we're back to our basic training ground of being aware of the in-breath or the out-breath, or any aspect from gross to subtle of our subjective experiencing, Buddha doesn't care at this point. He just wants us to contemplate the reality of impermanence as we're breathing in, as we're breathing out, as we're experiencing whatever we're experiencing, as we're experiencing whatever we're experiencing. Notice that it's characterized by flow, by movement, by change. It's a subjective flow of knowing. This is being known, this is being known, and it's never static. It's never a thing. And that's something that it just takes, the mind getting interested in, it's not even that subtle at this point, the truth of change that we're talking about. And it might be useful, even though we're running out of time, but just to take a little time to let's reflect, like the habit of objectifying what can only be a subjective experience. So let's catch that and realize I don't have to pretend that my experience is objective. I can realize that it's being known here and now in the heart, in the mind. And then just practice. And you might as well use the breathing in and breathing out unless some other stronger experience comes into the forefront. Just notice that whatever, and you don't have to control it, but whatever the mind is knowing, practice seeing it as a movement, as a flow, not a static this. Okay, let's just do that for a minute or two. So start by just sensing the subjective nature of our experiencing, being known here and now. And then the Buddha's instruction, breathing in, contemplating impermanence. Breathing out, contemplating impermanence, keeping that in mind. Is there anything that is not a movement. Anything in your experience that's not moving. Good. So the reason the Buddha, described this last four instructions as contemplating impermanence, contemplating dispassion, contemplating cessation, contemplating letting go or relinquishment, is he was mapping out something very natural, not something you or I have to do, but something we can have confidence in. When we keep impermanence in mind, which is just the way it is, then notice naturally, unavoidably, the heart is more and more filled, the mind is more filled with dispassion. It's like nothing to grasp, nothing here for me to grasp, because the very nature of every idea, every sound, every taste, every touch is flow. Why would the mind bother to look for solid ground where I could own it or have it? Right? The mind gives up on that project. It's a natural arising when impermanence is seen thoroughly. And remember, you can change the word impermanence. In some ways it's already gotten overused. So there are other synonyms like insubstantial, ephemeral, unreliable, ungovernable, nature of experience. Not trustworthy, not worthy of grasping, right? So then it makes sense that dispassion would arise when we are aware of that, then the heart starts clinging. Just like, people who have had a lot of relationships, romantic, intimate relationships, or even one. But at some point, we want to realize that it never was wise of me to expect that person or any person to make me happy, right? Which is just a kind of a larger expression of grasping. We have this idea of the person. So first a person is a flow, a changing, moving thing, process, and we make him into my partner. And then, as they're part of my ground, that's going to make me happy. Well, it doesn't work that way, does it? So we can, this insight, this liberating insight into dispassion is like how we see the unfolding of our spiritual life over not, over a month or even over a year, but over many years. We see there is this liberating, beautiful quality of dispassion that has arisen, right? So some of you have been around for a while, who've raised kids. This is an image, a teaching used in early Buddhism about using the trajectory of parenting as a metaphor for awakening, like the very real attachment when the kids are young, and all the neurotic fears, appropriate and neurotic fears that are there, caretaking the kids when they really need your undivided attention a lot of the time. But then when the kids are older, it's sort of like, if you're a wise parent, it's like, okay, at this point, they have rights to make their own mistakes, dig their own holes. I'll love them as best I can, but I don't really own it anymore, do I? And there's just a lot more dispassion about what the kids are up to when they're 30 or 50 or whatever they might be. It would be a little weird to somehow, and certainly suffering, to somehow track and feel responsible for the ups and downs of their day or their lives. Not that we don't care, but there's just a sense of space, dispassion. Oh yeah. Same with the world. And this is the interesting thing about engagement and activism and really showing up for injustice. It feels, sometimes it can seem like, oh, we have to really be suffering in order to care enough to do something. And this is the interesting thing to look at, each of us in our own lives, whether we're talking about our relationship to a pet, our relationship to a partner, our relationship to issues in the world where there's suffering and we really want to address it, or hope for more justice and we really want to bring that in. Can that really good, necessary work of life, duties and responsibilities, can it be done in the spirit of dispassion, or does it need attachment? And to not have an opinion, but to really look and see. So, and we'll spend maybe 3 or even 4 weeks on these 4 instructions. We'll keep doing, the first 12. But then these last four will emphasize in the weeks ahead. And it really is just the simplest view of the awakening process. The first 12 are really helping us to open the mind to the possibility of non-grasping. Just so we're activating the intuition that non-grasping is a possibility. Because until that point, all our mind knows is like, when we're hurting, is, well, I'm just not doing a good job at grasping the right thing. So we just sort of move around in the same space of our likes and dislikes, but we can, like, if I'm really suffering, oh, I realize I really wanting something to happen and I'm suffering. So I'll switch and I'll really want something else to happen. But we're still in the cycles of samsara until we've done enough spiritual practice where we've activated our natural intuition. We've learned something about the possibility of non-grasping, non-attachment. It's not just an idea. There's some real intuition. In Buddhism, we sometimes say, or the Buddha said, the taste of freedom. Yeah, and it's the same, Rafi, as the word disenchantment. I see Rafi's chat there. Yeah, so this disenchantment to dispassion to cessation. So the more we activate the reality of dispassion in our hearts, nothing worthy of grasping, then the heart naturally sheds more and more selfing. And we have a deeper and deeper taste of the mind free of grasping for a moment, or the mind free of self-centeredness, selfing for moments. And we're gaining confidence in that mind not being colored, not being affected by selfing, by self-centeredness. Because we don't know that mind yet. We have to realize that mind free of selfing. And that's the whole process we're using. Now that we have some confidence, then the Buddha says, live your life and do your meditation, keeping the ephemeral, insubstantial nature of any phenomena that the mind is using, keeping that in mind, keeping the dispassion that naturally arises because of noticing the insubstantial nature, keep the dispassion in mind, be really attuned to moments where the mind can realize non-grasping, not selfing, no self-centeredness, experience not being framed from a self-centered point of view. When that ceases, that's the third step there, cessation, moments of that selfing activity ceasing in the heart and mind. And that really sets in motion the deeper uprooting and releasing of the heart. So for the small groups again, we'll break into small groups for those who can stay. Thanks for all the interesting chats that people put down. But the question I thought might be useful is, it's easy to misinterpret dispassion as an aversion to life. So just to reflect together in your small groups of 3 or 4 people, like, when has dispassion felt really wholesome? And when was there that shadow of like aversion, get me the heck out of here, this is too much, I want out? And just sort of looking at that difference. And we'll keep talking about this in the weeks ahead. And remember, even if you can't stay for the small groups, you can just have this conversation with another Dharma friend during the week, or just contemplate it as you're taking a walk and as you're living your life, and see what you can learn. And we'll bring it forward with our conversations. So really grateful for everyone being here. A couple of announcements before I hand it over to Shannon. Feel free to join in for the Buddhist studies. It started last Monday, but it's okay to join in next, I guess that would be tomorrow. We're doing 7 Mondays, Mindfulness of Feeling Tone. And there's an introduction class that began last Tuesday night. You can join in this Tuesday. There's also every Tuesday Dhamma Among Us that Patrice and Shelley MC, and a lot of different voices from our community and guest teachers. So join in on that. I'll be doing a day-long retreat on Saturday the 27th. Meski and Shelley and I will be leading a workshop on April 10th, relating wisely to the sensual world, where we get to talk about our sense delights and how to relate wisely to them. And of course, lots of other things going on, including the weekly practice check-ins with Shelley and myself and Wynn and Stacy and Ramesh. So look at the public calendar for times to bring up your own questions. It's really, those are fruitful times.